If you're old enough to remember the spring and summer of 2018 and you were getting your information at that time from the mainstream fake performance art news media, then you remember living in a world where Michael Avenatti, the creepy porn lawyer, was being held up as the most important man in America, as the liberal establishment's answer to St. George, the man who might one day slay the bad orange dragon. And yes, in case you were wondering, I am giving myself a one-day reprieve from the no low-hanging fruit rule, because when it comes to creepy porn lawyer, I have to admit I am just about as weak as I am with Admiral Hunter Biden, America's greatest naval hero. So Avenatti was riding just about as high as a creepy porn lawyer can ride during those heady halcyon days of 2018. He was being fawned over by the likes of Stephen Colbert and Joy Behar and other towering figures of public intellect and sound judgment. He had a standing invitation to appear on any TV show he wanted to go on and give any monologue he felt like giving, while the person supposedly conducting the interview would just sit there and drink it all in like a doe-eyed fangirl because OMG, he's just so dreamy. Meanwhile, over on CNN, where the standing editorial policy is that they always have to be twice as absurd and 3 times as dishonest as the other fake news performance art channels, they had their primetime hosts talking about this guy as if he was a perfectly legitimate contender for the 2020 Democrat presidential nomination. A creepy porn lawyer for president. And by all appearances, they were actually serious. Fredo Cuomo acted like he was going to swoon each time he saw this guy's sleazy, rodent-like visage before him. You're a real fighter, Mr. Avenatti. I think you might be the guy who can bring down evil Orange Hitler, because I am a top journalist here at the most trusted name in news. Now, if you're a reasonable observer with half a brain in your head, in which case you wouldn't be watching CNN in the first place, it really was not difficult to see when this smarmy little jackass was riding high as the most well-respected man in Democratic political circles, when his narcissism was running in overdrive and he was drunk on his own hubris, that there was going to be, inevitably, a swift and rather spectacular downfall coming in his very near future. So it came as no great shock last year when he was rung up on a felony indictment for trying to fraudulently extort something like $30 million out of Nike, and talk about a battle with no good guys in it. Creepy porn lawyer versus creepy race-hustling Chinese child slavers. Because who the hell are you supposed to root for in that contest? But it matters not, because in the event, creepy porn lawyer lost. And there isn't going to be much creepy porn lawyering in his immediate future, because for the next 2.5 years, or 18 months potentially, with good behavior, his title is going to be Creepy Porn Inmate number 26-17905. And strangely, there hasn't been any sort of comment from the chorus of trained seals in the fake performance art news media regarding their feelings on the stunning downward spiral of this man whom they were ready to anoint the new president of the United States just a mere 3 years ago. But then that stands to reason, doesn't it? Because if they start talking about why they were trying to pump up a creepy porn lawyer as a challenger to President Donald Trump, if they start talking about why this guy of all people was once their unanimous presumptive nominee for the presidency, then they'll have to start talking about why it was that they thought that. And they thought it because, let's face it, it was a tacit admission that the field of potential candidates in the Democrat field in 2020 was a pile of crap from top to bottom. I mean, who are we going to nominate? Joe Biden? That guy can barely make it out to his driveway to sniff the hair of the girl who brings him his newspaper in the morning. And who's going to be his running mate? Kamala Harris, the California cackler, the only person in the Senate who's more dumb than Cory Booker and less dumb than Mazie Hirono? Shit, who else do we even have? The gay kid who failed at being the mayor of a college party town? Or that Irish dickhead who pretends to be a Mexican? Guys, I think we've got a pretty serious problem here. But I've been watching this creepy porn lawyer, and I think I like the cut of his jib. But that was not the only implicit admission during the media's brief and very intense love affair with the lawyer of the video prostitute. Sorry, I'm not going to say porn actress or adult film star, and anyone who's offended will have to get over it, who allegedly banged the future president back when she was young enough to be worth banging. Because it was also an implicit admission that President Donald Trump was doing a really great job at being the president. Because if your entire purpose in life, if the whole nexus of your news organization's existence is to slander Donald Trump, and he's the current president, and everything you say about his character and his competence is true, then you should have no shortage of things to talk about with respect to his job performance. But what were you actually talking about instead? If you're CNN, you were doing, I believe it's 167 live shots that they did with the creepy porn lawyer over the course of about 11 weeks. So pay no attention to the man who's securing the border, who's dialing back all the onerous regulations, who's strapping a rocket pack on the economy, who's delivering energy independence and full employment and advancing the cause of world peace. Because that man might have banged a video prostitute in 2005 and paid her not to talk about it. And whoever knew that the Democrats and their dutiful media lapdogs were such sticklers for traditional sexual morality? What's going to be next? AOC wearing a promise ring? No, Jim Eagle, she was not separated at birth with Secretariat, and that's a really awful thing to say. You were on thin ice, my friend. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where I'm just asking, do I have to pay the road tax for the miles I drive to get to my polling place to vote to recall the governor who instituted the road tax? Inquiring minds want to know. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. Happy Friday, by the way. I am your eponymous host and humble servant, and I have about half a dozen things I want to talk about in the main segment tonight, which means I'll probably get to maybe 2 of them, but such is life when you're a bloviating blowhard on YouTube. Well, when I was watching the Michael Avenatti highlight reels that people have been playing over the last couple of days, creepy porn lawyer's greatest hits, if you will, and getting the sense that I just talked about, that you're watching a man who is completely drunk on his own unwarranted self-importance, who has no idea he's hurtling towards some fiery train wreck of an ending. I was reminded of our good friend, the Supreme Ayatollah of the Holy Apostolic Church of Safety Theater, Santo Antonio della Fauci. Peace be upon him. May you ever drink the sweet nectar of his wisdom and scienciness. Who I think right now, as we speak, is in his own celebrity end stage period, just like Avenatti once was. The number of TV invitations is starting to dwindle, which is really horrifying, because Tony Fauci loves TV cameras to a degree that even crying Chuck Schumer finds embarrassing. If he doesn't see the warm glow of that magic red light, the number of times each day to which he deems himself entitled to see it, he can get a little ornery, as octogenarians often do. And I think we're starting to see a bit of angry Tony now. He said, I'm a totally impartial, politically disinterested person here, but why can't these goddamn stupid Republican dipshits just take the fucking shot? Just take the shot, you rubes, you country music listening buffoons, you gun-toting hicks who think you should be allowed to sing in church, you redneck buffoons who wave the American flag without a hint of shame. Just get over it, you idiots. Stop being so political. Why do Republicans always have to be so political? Why can't you just blindly follow my orders like you're supposed to, even though I've been wrong about literally every single thing? I wasn't even right one time by accident, even by random chance. I should have got one thing right somewhere along the way, since even the blindest of career bureaucrat squirrels occasionally finds himself an acorn. But no, I was wrong about all the things, and now I am deeply, deeply offended that you stupid yokels, you flyover country, cousin marrying NASCAR watchers who get your supper from the side of the road, will not ignore my 000 batting average and reflexively, obediently do everything I say because I said to do it. And I am going to blow out my throat if I keep up that impression much longer. So let's move on to another dull, unexceptional career bureaucrat. The man who somehow inexplicably is the current HHS secretary, despite having no experience or qualifications that recommend him to that position. And yes, Hunter Biden, I know that sounds familiar, but I'm not talking about you, so stay out of this. And that man being Javier Becerra of California, who distinguished himself in his previous job as California Attorney General by tweeting insults at Donald Trump and not really prosecuting anyone for anything. Actually, wait, that's not actually true. Because if you told a person with a big swinging dick that they'll have to use the men's restroom, then he would prosecute you. If there was an illegal alien on your payroll and you reported it to the Department of Labor, as you're required to do by federal law, then he'd prosecute you under the law, which he counts as his greatest professional achievement, that says employers who comply with federal law are committing a felony under state law. But if you did something less egregious, like raping or murdering or robbing somebody, then you could expect nothing but kind and friendly treatment from our friend Javier. And especially if you're in the country illegally, because this guy is loud and proud about his belief in the intrinsic moral superiority of illegal aliens over citizens and lawful immigrants. But the man we now know as Secretary Becerra said yesterday that the federal government has every right to send its agents rapping upon your front door to interrogate you and your spouse and your children about your vaccination status. This jackass is actually offended that you might have a problem with something like that. And his rationale? Quote, "Perhaps we should point out that the federal government has spent trillions of dollars trying to keep Americans alive during this pandemic." Now, you probably know where I'm going first with this. This man is acting, as Democrats seem to always do, like the money in the country is all the money is rightfully owned by the central government. So when they send you some money that they took from you in the first place, they are giving you a gift out of the goodness of their hearts, and you are thus in debt to your benevolent overlords in Washington, D.C., so that when they send their goons to your door to dress you down about why you've declined to receive medical treatment that you don't want or need, you will dutifully and politely surrender all of the relevant documents. You will thank them for their time and for their dedication and for saving you from your own crippling stupidity, and you will then alter your behavior accordingly. Furthermore, you will become accustomed to in-person visits from emissaries of the central government who wish to better understand why you've been engaging in such troubling behaviors recently. Because, gosh, we just couldn't help noticing. You've been pretty critical of the regime lately on social media. And we sure wouldn't want this to turn into a domestic extremism situation. Nobody wants another January 6th, after all, so any firearms you've got here in the house will need to be taken, though, just for safekeeping. Don't worry. It's all about public safety. So according to Secretary Becerra, because the federal government sent you a stimulus check that you never asked for, they now have the right to interrogate you on your own doorstep about matters that are supposed to be privileged information between you and your doctor. Did you notice they didn't even provide an opt-out where people could say, I haven't had any income disruption, I don't need a stimulus check, so please don't send me one? Well, do you see now what the reason was for that? They just wanted to be able to hold that check over your head as signifying a moral debt that you, the taxpayer, now owe to them, the government, which is just about as perverse as perversion gets in a country that is supposed to be free. You send me money I didn't need, didn't ask for, which was already my money to begin with, and the net result of you sending it, of repeatedly conjuring trillions of dollars of fake money out of thin air, is just to drastically devalue the money I already have in savings and to make everything I buy cost more. And I'm supposed to act like you've done me some sort of favor, Secretary Becerra? Because the last time I checked, your administration's policies have directly caused the price of a gallon of gasoline here in California to double in 6 months. So tell me again, how appreciative am I supposed to be when these checks you're sending me have the net effect of barely offsetting the massive cost of living increase that you have created with your idiotic virtue signaling policies, and which you have exacerbated by sending the checks in the first place? I talk about your self-licking ice cream cones. This might be the most self-lickingest one ever. And speaking of ice cream cones, we continue to live in a world where the current president of the United States, the corpse of the guy who used to be former segregationist Senator Joe Biden, seems eminently unable to discuss any topic at any length except what kind of ice cream cone he had today, which I believe makes him the intellectual fellow traveler of your average 4-year-old, though, to be fair, the 4-year-old soils himself less often than the president does. Remember when our friends in the fake performance art news media 2 or 3 times a year when they got bored with talking about video prostitutes and creepy porn lawyers, would try to drag out the 25th Amendment card and argue that Trump was in the throes of some sort of cognitive impairment, and it's the patriotic duty of Mike Pence and the cabinet to declare him permanently incapacitated and mentally unfit to continue in office. For 4 years, they dragged it out like clockwork every time the Russia collusion narrative started running out of steam, or during the periodic lulls between fake impeachment hoaxes. And fast forward to today, and those same people who engaged in all of those pearl-clutching histrionics over Donald Trump's supposed cognitive impairment fall all over themselves, declaring that the corpse of Joe Biden is the absolute sharpest tool in the history of the presidential shed, even as he has to fumble around in his pocket for a note card when he's asked a simple yes or no question about the end of a foreign military engagement. Even when he starts a sentence and then goes completely blank for 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds as his train of thought derails somewhere outside Wilmington. Yes, it's an Amtrak train. Even as he refers quite troublingly to a they who apparently are the ones giving him orders. They told me to say this. They told me I couldn't say this. I'm going to be in trouble when they find out I did this, or when they find out I answered questions from the press. And strangely, not a peep from any of our 25th Amendment warriors, who were fully prepared to oust President Trump from office because he was supposedly mentally unwell. The same President Trump who worked 20-hour days for the duration of his presidency, while President Geritol Joe Biden, in the best-case scenario, is good for maybe 20 minutes of semi-lucidity once per day in the late morning hours. And you reporters, you better be on your best behavior. If Joe's having a bad day, there'll be no questions about anything but ice cream. And if there's a problem with this, your credential will be revoked and given to someone who understands how to be a team player. I wonder if Joe knows his people are spying on Tucker Carlson and likely other journalists who aren't friendly to the regime. Hell, I wonder if Joe knows who Tucker Carlson is. Yeah, I used to know a guy named Carl Tucker. He was a bad dude, let me tell you. One time I had to take him out behind the tennis courts and wrap a motorcycle chain around his head. That was shortly before I got arrested trying to spring Nelson Mandela out of prison. And I'll tell you what, if Joe Biden's real life actually contained all the events that he likes to imagine it did, it really would be one of the most interesting lives ever lived. I bet next he's going to claim that he was the guy who infiltrated Buckingham Palace and chatted up the Queen while she was in bed. Then he'll start saying that he flew the Atlantic with Lindbergh as a stowaway in the back of the Spirit of St. Louis. We already know he was a major player in the civil rights movement, even though the people who actually were in the civil rights movement stubbornly persist in remembering him primarily as a former Southern segregationist senator who palled around with other Southern segregationist senators who never really did a damn thing to advance the cause of the civil rights movement. And this is the same man who today, amazingly, wags his finger in your face and lectures you about your complicity in something called systemic racism. But I guess just as only Nixon could go to China, only a former segregationist senator could go to Minneapolis. And that's it for me. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Please do remember to watch the video several times so that perhaps maybe one of your views won't get deleted. And if you felt inclined to share the video, that would be very much appreciated indeed, since needless to say, I am swimming upstream against the tide of big tech's disapproval and opprobrium and can use all the word of mouth I can possibly get. So here is wishing everyone a delightful and edifying weekend. See you Monday. Get off my lawn.